kinesiology folks are like a special brand of like ego, because we're the jocks who are also smart. And so like we're like the oppressor and the oppressed at the same time. And so it's like a really special mix of like egos in kinesiology research.
Is it hard to get something published? Is
It
like
has
a really
been for
rigorous?
me. I don't know. Like maybe I'm just like maybe I just like wasn't trained well as a student, and that part of it could be related to like sexism and that I've experienced like in academia. But yeah, I think so. When I wanted to publish that my cannabis and exercise survey, I started that survey in the fall of 2017, finished data collection in fall of 2018, was working with a graduate student to like write it up for publication. It was like not ready for publication for like another year. Like I still have to do like the other parts of my job. So I was like focusing on other things. Finally submitted it to one journal. They were like, no, this is a survey. We're not going to publish this. Okay, fine. Send it to another place. Yeah, this is kind of outside the scope of our journal as well. So I sent it to another place, and then had to go through like the review process is that you basically say, all right, here's what the article is about. Here are some ideas of reviewers who are doing something like related to this field. That could be good people to look at this paper to see if this is peer reviewed, and then that process of these 3 reviewers who are looking at your work, going through everything, and then so I had to go back and forth with them for like 3 times, and like each of those times it's like 2 or 3 months where it goes by, and it's just like another year has now passed. And in that period of time, there's been like two or 3 articles that are similar that have been published in the meantime. So now I have to like update all my references to say like, no, this wasn't the first study anymore. This is the 3rd study. But it these match.
Just because of that
time. Yeah. And so it's been a really frustrating process for me personally to get things published.
Well, yeah, especially like you said. I mean, if you can't get it out fast enough, and then somebody else just comes along and can, for whatever reason, push it through.
Yeah.
And then it looks like yours is now dated, and it's like, I did this. I've been sitting on it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I've realized is when I do look at these other surveys, it looks like we all started doing our surveys basically like the same month. We all had these different surveys. None of us knew that anyone else was doing this. And so my initial thought as like a competitive scientist person is like, hell, like this asshole, like, they don't know what they're talking about. Like my study is going to be so much better than this one. And so that was my initial, like, not good response. And then my second thought is like, oh, this person was like on the same wavelength as me. They're probably going to be pretty cool. And the more I've actually reached out to people who are doing cannabis and exercise research, the more I'm realizing like, oh, it's not cutthroat. Like, academia can be really cutthroat sometimes, but the more I've reached out to them, it's like, these people are awesome. Like, they've all been really kind and really collegial, and I really like these people. And so when Angela Bryan, she was the one who published the first survey about cannabis and exercise, when I saw that was published, I reached out to her and said, hey, congratulations, I'm working on another thing right now. Like, you got there first, but like, this is awesome. Like, I'm really glad that you got this out. And just through me reaching out to her, she's now gotten me in contact. Like, whenever a journalist reaches out to her, then they're like, oh, do you have anyone else who might be a good person to interview? She always sends my name in. Like, there was a conference where she was asked to be the keynote speaker for it, and she's like, I'm going to be busy at this other conference. You should ask Whitney Ogle for it. It's like, that's awesome.
That's huge.
Yeah. It's I mean, I'm so grateful. And so, I have a colleague down at CSU San Marcos right now, and he and I are organizing a group of other people who are doing cannabis and exercise research. And my kind of idea is to reimagine how academic worlds can, how we can communicate with each other as academics, like
across disciplines.
Yeah, and like, or like even like within our discipline, because this is like kind of the wild, wild west out there for like cannabis and exercise research. It's like, there's enough room for all of us here. And like, we all agree that there's not a lot of research out here. So how can we either work together if we have like a similar research interest? How can we collaborate and like, you know, get more data from California and Colorado, for example? Or like, okay, so I know that these people over here are doing stuff related to inflammation. Cool, that means I can go over here and do my reaction time stuff. And so, yeah, we're organizing a group of cannabis and exercise researchers right now to have these like anarchy light kind of conferences where we get together and just like decide what are the 3 topics we're going to talk about today, and like the ones that most people are interested in, we'll talk about those things. How can we, like, what do we know about this topic? What can we collaborate on in the future, and what research needs to be done? And so we all kind of like move forward together with a stronger baseline and a stronger like connection with each other.
A unity.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause it's like, you know, academia, I mean, like any system is just made by people. And so
you hear about it being cutthroat.
Yeah.
I mean, at least from the outside perspective, you hear that it's a pretty, you know, dog eat dog world.
Right. But the more and more I've reached out to people who are doing cannabis and exercise related things, the more I'm like, these people are actually awesome. And like, we're not at each other's throats. And so I've been really happy with how amazing all these people have been when I've actually reached out to them. And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to create something that isn't cutthroat. Because we're talking about cannabis and exercise.
Yeah,
like, I mean, like, how,
it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. Like, we're like, we get to, you know, talk about exercise and we get to talk about cannabis. Like,
and you get to smoke weed.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are we upset?
That's right.
Have you noticed or have you experienced any of that cutthroatness or that just agitation against peers?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned that sexism. Has that been a big
Totally,
factor in your career there?
There's a really great movie. It's on Netflix. You can watch it, called Picture a Scientist, about how, like, you know, when I say like, what is picture a scientist? Like, when you think of a scientist in your head, what kind of person do you think of?
I think of, it's going to be sexist. I think of a nerdy guy in a lab coat, a white lab coat with glasses.
Yep, exactly. That's what most people think of. And then when you actually look at like who's making it in higher education, it's like there's actually like more and more women who are earning PhDs. But then when you look at you know, the number of PhDs, like the number of tenured professors that are women, it's like it goes way down. And so there's all these like little things along the way. You know, I'm not going to compare sexism to racism, but like there, you know, that model of the iceberg where it's like, we can all agree, like, the stuff above the surface.
Oh,
like,
what you can see versus what you can't.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, we can all agree that, like, sexually assaulting a colleague in the workplace is, like, atrocious. Like, yeah, we all agree on that, right?
I don't think you're going to get a lot of pushback on that one.
Exactly. But, and so that's what, you know, when you're talking to like, men in academia, it's like, well, like, I'm not assaulting anyone. It's just like, yeah, but you're making my life, like, pretty terrible. So, like, you know, there's
is that a big portion of just being an asshole?
Yeah, it's like these like little ways that life is just like a little bit harder and like than it needs to be. And so yeah, it's like I'm after watching that movie, I was like able to be like, oh my gosh, like it all makes sense now. Like all the ways that I've been like down on myself about like, oh, I should just like work harder. It's like, no. That's actually really screwed up that like this happened to this male colleague and it like didn't happen for me. Like what? Like it's, and so understanding that more has like given me a better understanding of like, oh yeah, wow, this is kind of actually like all around all the time. And like, I'm doing okay in spite of the system.
That's gotta feel good. That even if you have these barriers put up in front of you, you can get through. I mean, it sucks that you have to break through them, right?
It's like, cool, I have grit. Awesome.
Like, great, there's not a medal for that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and that's why I'm trying to like reimagine what an academic space could look like. It doesn't have to be this like patriarchal, like, you know, who's better than another person. It's like, we can all get along together. Like, we can all agree on that. So like, let's do that. Let's make that the actual reality of how we communicate with each other.
Well, that's how it should be.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Everybody in that space in academia, in theory, is there for the same purpose of a pursuit for something higher.
Yeah.
You're trying to learn. That's what everybody that goes to school is trying to do. That's what the teachers are there for, is to help disseminate that. Why would there be contention? You get it in the workplace, in corporate settings, where, okay, I've got to get to the top of the chain. I've got to be CEO. I've got to do these things. I've got to be cutthroat so I can get there.
Yep.
But in academia, it's why?
Fragile egos.
Is that what it is?
Totally. Yeah. I think, I mean, it's kind of... it's high achievers, people who like to achieve high, good things and like have like a lot of letters after in their name. So it's like a lot of that, like,
that
macho
prestige.
kind of, the prestige kind of thing. And then, it's people who were maybe nerds growing up, like who read a lot of books growing up and like
not a lot of social skills.
Yeah. So potentially there's a little bit of some of that, and that's why kinesiology folks are like a special brand of like ego, because we're the jocks who are also smart. And so like we're like the oppressor and the oppressed at the same time, and so it's like a really special mix of like egos in kinesiology research.
Do you guys catch a little more flack because of that?
Totally.
Because you are the jocks. And so if you have these academics who might have been bullied or who weren't favored, it's high school all over again.
Right. It's like, oh, like you guys are like doing stuff about like how, how people can run on a treadmill. It's like, I'm doing real research here about like cells and, how this relates to cancer. It's like, yeah, if people exercise more, they're probably going to have like less cancer rates. So like, can we,
bite me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Like your science is not better than my science,
Yeah, I could see them trying to shit on the exercise sciences.
Yeah.
Really, come over and do some real science. I'm doing particle physics over here.
Exactly.
Well, that's not going to help if you can't get out of your chair because your body's breaking down.
Right. Yeah. Our bodies is the one thing that we have and that one thing that we have control over. So why not focus on that?